The Chinese Communist Party is buying up farmland in North Dakota. But there's a problem. The land is near a military base, and lawmakers are voicing concerns. That's as Huawei is reportedly caught sniffing around U.S. nuclear sites. The Chinese telecom giant has been installing its gear close to the facilities. With it, the FBI says the company may be able to disrupt U.S. military communications. A report shows the Chinese regime is building a network of informants inside America's central banking system. And some Americans are more willing to share their DNA with genetics companies, hoping to learn more about their health and heritage. But a lawmaker is warning against the services. He says foreign adversaries could use it to make targeted bioweapons. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The Chinese regime is buying up farmland in North Dakota. The problem is the plots of land are really close to a U.S. Air Force base. Now, American officials are raising concerns. Could the Chinese Communist Party use the land to spy on the U.S. military? The Grand Forks Air Force Base is home to some of the country's most sensitive military technology. That includes drone technology used for space and satellite operations. The base is also home to a networking center. A local senator says it handles the backbone of all U.S. military communications across the globe. The land purchase is a $2.6 billion deal by Chinese company Fufeng Group. The city's mayor has pushed for the project, which he said is the largest single investment in the city's history. But some locals don't like the deal. One of the land sellers, Gary Bridgeford, told CNBC he had been called every name in the book by his neighbors for selling the property. Former Telecom executive John Pelson told us it's not the amount of land China is buying that's the most concerning. It's where they are buying it.
But if you're building $700 million worth of corn milling and processing, which is what the Chinese company supposedly wants to do, there's going to be every opportunity there to make this an eavesdropping site. And there was no credibility, in my opinion, to the story about why they had to pick that location, which they acknowledged isn't near their customers, is far north for where they would have otherwise put it, and is the only location they're going to have in the United States. They decided that North Dakota was a place to be.
A representative for the Fufeng Group's U.S. subsidiary denied the espionage accusations. China has a pattern of buying American land near sensitive military locations. In 2021, a former Chinese military official bought 130,000 acres of land close to Laughlin Air Base in Texas. The land bought by China surrounds that sensitive air base. Lawmakers and officials from both parties, including Elizabeth Warren and Mike Pence, have raised concerns about it. As part of the land purchases, China has been growing its presence in the American food system. In total, as of 2020, Chinese investors had bought almost 200,000 acres of farmland, worth a value of $1.9 billion. Along the same line, North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer shares his reaction to the Chinese purchase of the farmland in his home state. Let's zoom in.
Senator Kevin Cramer, thank you so much for joining us in the Capitol Report.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity and for the interest in this story.
Senator, a company in your home state of North Dakota with close ties to the Chinese regime has recently purchased 300 acres of farmland. This purchase is raising some concerns. What are some of those concerns?
Well, there's one very specific concern that has a lot of people focused on it, and that is that it's in fairly close proximity to the Grand Forks Air Force Base. The Grand Forks Air Force Base is a very important ISR mission. We right now fly Global Hawks around the world. They're very important surveillance, as you know, aircraft. We also just a couple of weeks ago cut the ribbon on a new Space Development Agency facility at the base that will be the first ground station for what's called Tranche 1 of the low orbiting satellites low Earth orbiting satellites. And obviously, that surveillance capability includes the uplinks and downlinks of lots of data and whatnot. So the prospect of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, which is obviously quite well known for its ability to spy and its willingness to spy and steal, that's of concern. But I would have to say that for me personally, it's really even a broader concern than that. And that is the idea that we've already, I think in many respects, made ourselves as a country too vulnerable, our supply chain too vulnerable to adversaries and other regimes. And certainly the food supply is an important part of national security, and the idea that we would somehow allow investment in our state and our country in our food supply after we've seen nefarious behavior already with the supply chain for food by the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, particularly through the pandemic.
China is the most active foreign buyer of real estate in the U.S. According to the National Association of Realtors, Chinese investors spent $6.1 billion on American real estate in the past year, more than any other foreign buyers. The state with the heaviest volume of purchases was Florida, accounting for nearly a quarter of all international real estate purchases in the U.S. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis told Fox News that he didn't think companies with ties to the Chinese Communist Party should be allowed to buy up American real estate assets. He's vowed to crack down on undue influence from rogue states like the Chinese regime, saying we want to make sure that we're cutting ties so that we're not funding our #1 adversary. The Chinese Communist Party has reportedly been recruiting informants inside the Federal Reserve. At one point, the regime even allegedly threatened to imprison a Fed economist during a trip to Shanghai. It was an attempt to force him to offer non-public American economic data. Those details come from a recent Senate report and represent the latest Beijing effort to gather sensitive American data. Its goal? To build a network of influence inside U.S. institutions and government agencies. The report also reveals that in 2015, the Federal Reserve identified 13 of its staff as persons of interest who had troubling ties to the Chinese regime. Now, the Republican-led Senate committee that published the report is at odds with the Fed. The Republicans are scolding the Fed for failing to combat Chinese espionage attempts, while Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is strongly pushing back on the report. On Monday, Powell wrote in a letter calling the findings unfair, unsubstantiated, and unverified insinuations. The Chinese regime denies the espionage accusations. The Senate report reveals that in one case, a Fed worker was allegedly detained on 4 separate occasions during a 2019 trip to Shanghai. Chinese officials were said to have threatened to harm his family unless he offered up sensitive American economic data. Chinese officials also reportedly tapped his phones and computers and copied the contact info of other Fed officials from his WeChat account. The Chinese official then allegedly asked him to sign a letter promising not to discuss the incident with anyone. Chinese telecom company Huawei is in the hot seat over some of its business decisions. An FBI investigation found that the company has a pattern of installing equipment on cell towers located near American military bases. What makes that a cause for suspicion? The towers are in rural areas where installing gear is not profitable for the company. So why install gear there? The FBI reportedly found that Huawei's equipment could technically disrupt American military communications. That includes highly restricted Defense Department communications used by U.S. Strategic Command, the force that oversees nuclear weapons. A recent CNN report highlighted the issue, but U.S. officials and experts have been raising similar concerns over Huawei for years. In a recent interview, Jonathan Pelson, author of the book Wireless Wars, said the Chinese telecom company is driven by motives other than profit.
It was clearly not a coincidence because they were not making any money on these deployments. It was clearly a political and military move that they were doing to put their cell tower equipment right around our most secure locations in the country.
Huawei is believed to have extensive links to the Chinese Communist Party. A member of the House Intelligence Committee is warning people not to share their health data and DNA with consumer genetics companies like 23andMe. He says that information can be used to program new bioweapons. Here's the warning from Democratic lawmaker Jason Crow. He's a member of the U.S. House Intelligence Committee.
There are now weapons under development and developed that are designed to target specific people. Right, that's what this is, where you can actually take someone's DNA, take their medical profile, and you can target a biological weapon that will kill that person.
The lawmaker says people, especially the younger generation, are sometimes too ready to share their DNA data with companies, and that can cause national security issues.
And people will very rapidly spit into a cup and send it into 23andMe and get really interesting data about their background. And guess what? Their DNA is now owned by a private company and can be sold off with very little intellectual property protection or privacy protection. And we don't have legal and regulatory regimes to deal with that.
The consumer genetics company he mentioned, 23andMe, has repeatedly stated that it does not sell off customers' private information. It also previously said that fears of China stealing its data were misplaced. But a report last year from the National Counterintelligence and Security Center highlighted the company over concerns. In 2015, the company received investment fundings from Wuxi. The company's controlling shareholder is Jiang Zhichen, the grandson of former Chinese Communist leader Jiang Zemin. U.S. officials have warned that Chinese firms are collecting genetic data from around the world. The communist regime has launched a campaign to proactively develop the world's largest biodatabase. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Did Beijing allow COVID-19 to spread intentionally? And can your own health data be weaponized against you? We hear from Pete Hoekstra, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, for details. The full episode is available on our partner platform, AtBlock TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, promoting martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. The 2022 NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition preliminaries will be held in New York and Taiwan. On August 28th, the finals will be broadcast live online worldwide. Registration hotline 188-477-9228. For more information, please visit martialarts.ntdtv.com.